Back here on Good Better Broker with Corrina Carter. She is the CEO of CMS Mortgage Solutions out of Chesapeake, Virginia. Corrina, welcome.
Thank you.
So great to have you here. A bit about you for our listeners. 26 years in the business, and you run the #1 broker shop in the state of Virginia for 3 years in a row now, and you have doubled in size over the last 12 months with your new hiring and onboarding process. So for a company that was already doing well, why did you go into this new process?
Justin, during this market, I really, I really felt like it was a need to have conversations with other peers and have conversations of what the future looked like, and preparing for a little bit more of a long game down the road, as UWM teaches too as well. What does that look like for hiring? So we started thinking about, okay, how can we dial in a little bit more to our hiring process and actually give people the actual advantage to start a new career?
So I want to ask you a bit about the training piece relating to your own experience in the business. And this kind of goes back to your origin story in the mortgage industry. So how did training become an area of the business that is so personal for you?
When we got in the business, it was surely what everybody talks about, right? You get a card and a phone, right? For me, it was more or less, I got fired from my job, so I had to find a job. And in finding a career in mortgages, we really started out as like what they would call back then Girl Fridays. And we did all the tedious work around. So no one really wanted to train us or teach us. So it was really a thing for me to really talk about, how do you get training in the industry? How do you give it? And who's going to be receptive to it?
Generally speaking, from what you have seen, how much of a need is there for LOs and mortgage brokers to invest in some form of training?
Everyone should. Everyone should. So even today, I go to 2 or 3 conferences a year for mortgages and 2 or 3 for business-wise. So I think everyone should adapt some type of process on how they're going to onboard and train someone, whether it even be just an assistant. So one of the things I failed at early on was not hiring an assistant sooner.
So even for you,
yes,
26 years in the business, as we just talked about, you're still doing this every single year.
Every single year. We are evolving. We're adapting different processes. And we may go in 2 months deep and say, oh, that doesn't work. Let's start over. Let's do something different.
With brand new LOs, and I know that lots of shops out there are recruiting. They're recruiting from retail specifically. Realistically, how long does it take for a brand new LO to get their feet under them?
Usually I'd say about 12 months, right? And that's a long time to invest in yourself and into a career. But usually I'd say about 12 months. I wouldn't want to fool someone and say the first 2 months you'll make a lot of money, right? Even 26 years ago, it took us 9 to 10 months to really build a good pipeline and what that looked like of your contacts.
You are big on shortening the path for success for your LOs, and you have 60 of them right now. So how do you go about doing that?
I feel like part of it is engaging them in the business. So how can we teach them and shorten the road and make their speed bumps less on what we did and what we weren't successful at? So sharing our path is one thing. Sharing our wins, sharing our losses, and sharing what we do right on a weekly basis and what we do wrong.
You invest a lot of time and a lot of resources into training. Give our listeners an idea of exactly what you do at CMS.
Sure, absolutely. So for the first 6 weeks, we onboard them with a mentor, and that mentor walks them through at least 1 hour per week, if not 2, on an individual path. And we call it like a mortgage bootcamp. And so that goes 6 weeks. But each week we do a Tech and Tool Tuesdays, Winning Wednesdays, and a Tell Me More Thursdays. They're just 30 minutes. They can tune in once, they can tune in none. We record them and send them out, but we bring in industry experts, mortgage-related, product-related, investor-related, but then we also bring in other people who talk about leadership, maybe family, maybe health-wise. We bring in people that could be of interest to them on how they can be successful in organizing their life, organizing their business.
How did you figure this all out? I mean, how did you set all of these different trainings up and figure out what was going to be best and, as we just talked about, shorten that path to success for your originators?
Sure. In the past 2 years, in interviewing more than a couple hundred people on finding new career paths or either coming over to CMS, I really felt like there was one thing everybody was looking for, and that was collaboration. And so we did one call last year on Thursdays, Tell Me More Thursdays, and it was an hour and a half. And we kind of started losing a little bit of our value, I think, on that. And he's like, okay, how can we redo that? What does it look like? So it's a huge commitment to bring it 3 times a week. And then we added 4. We do a whole hour all-in training on Tuesday. So, and that's for newbies or experienced. So now we do 4 times a week. And it's a lot of commitment on the team, but at the same time, I feel like that's what everybody is asking for right now is how can I be involved? How can I collaborate? And they want to share their wins and their losses with each other.
Does that strike you as remarkable? I mean, you've been doing this for a while, and this broker community that has really grown substantially over the last few years is really something. And what you just talked about has to be just amazing for you to see that need and that want to collaborate and improve.
Absolutely. And, you said it best one time when we were talking, Justin, is you also have to have the ability to learn, right? And the ability to dial in. Some people want to create their own path, and that is great as well, too. But what if you took a little bit about different paths? If you took a little piece of different people and what that looks like. So in creating these training programs and creating the coaching calls, as we call them, they can take a little bit from each person, and they don't have to just dial into one particular path from one person, So you go like, if your mom tells you to do something, are you always going to do it? No, right? So now if you have 12 different people giving you a little bit of advice here and there, what can you take a little piece out of each one and kind of create your own path? We encourage that, and we want them to do that.
You mentioned the specific training courses. You've got Tech and Tool Tuesdays, Winning Wednesdays, Tell Me More Thursdays, and I love those names, but I want to learn more. Tell me about each of those and why they are named as such.
Sure. So for Tuesdays, Tech and Tool Tuesdays is more of how to make their job more efficient. How to organize your inbox, all the way down to how to create a podcast, all the way down to doing lunch and learns, Canva training. And then Winning Wednesdays is who was successful in doing what they did, in the mortgage or in their past career, right? And how did that bring them to be successful in what we're doing and share with them? And then Tell Me More Thursdays is like, what can we dial in to give you more as all the tools in your toolbox? So when I became a broker in 2005, I was the only broker in my area to have FHA. And at that time, we really didn't need FHA because it was pretty much what we would call the non-QM world now, right? Subprime. So not a lot of people needed FHA, and they said I was crazy to have it. In 2009, I was the only one that had FHA. So I was the only broker that stood last, and everybody had to send me their FHA deals. So Tell Me More Thursdays is like that, is what tool can we actually give you that will help you dial in your process of what you really like to do?
Interesting. And you're getting feedback as well. It's not just you talking to the LOs, it's you getting feedback from them, which I think is great. This is also interesting. On your website, you say doing business the right way starts with a streamlined process. What do you mean by that?
So a few years ago, about 5 or 6 years ago, we call our conference room sometimes the war room. And we go into it, gets a little steamy, and we dialed in our process and we dissected our processing process into 4 pieces. And in streamlining that, I will never go back to A to Z, meaning most brokers think, I got to have a process or I got to have a process. I think you actually have to have a process, not a processor. And we took a little bit from each one of our investors, but especially followed UWM's process of how they kind of dissected each part of their stuff a little differently. And since then, it's helped us become the #1 broker in the state of Virginia. It's helped speed up our process from 21 days to less than 14. And we're still dialing into that today.
So it's an assembly line type operation. That's how
Absolutely.
you refer to it, your processing desk. How much of that do you implement into your training courses?
A lot, because we tell everybody, if you lean in you can have 6 assistants. So most people think, okay, one of my faults is not hiring an assistant sooner, but was it a fault of not hiring an assistant sooner or a fault of not really creating a better process sooner, right? So now that we have the process, they should be leaning into the process and having 6 assistants instead of saying, hey, I need help with this, I need help with this. What part of that can they dial into their process to create their business plan?
You are a self-taught originator yourself, and it's no surprise that you believe in really putting in the work to learn the business. It's not going to happen overnight, and you really have to roll up your sleeves and get it done. How do you go about delivering that message to your LOs and also your coaching clients?
So I always talk about one thing, first in and last out. So I believe in that. They're not going to do anything you're not going to do. Right? So getting in front of the camera, being here with you today, doing a podcast, going to a conference, doing training, being first in the office, last out. So if they see you doing it, are they going to follow suit?
Interesting. No, I love that. Leading by example. That's what you are doing. You were on Inside Pass with us this morning, so you've got that distinction, doing the Inside Pass Good Better Broker doubleheader, Corrina. And you were talking on the show about the 33% rule, and I love this, so I want you to share with our listeners how you explain this to your LOs and how it helps set them up for success.
Sure. I tell everybody, if you're thinking too hard about originating, then you're just thinking too hard about it, right? If you're sitting in front of your computer, which most people are doing these days, you put together a spreadsheet and you really dial into who you have and who you know. And then you have to constantly get at it every single week. So 33% should be family and friends. So you start dialing the list. You should have 500 family and friends within. Everybody has 500 friends on Facebook, right?
For the most part, yeah.
For the most part, sooner or later. And then you have 33% should be real estate agents or real estate related. And then 33% should be business to business and community. So as you're going about your life, if you're going to be a successful originator, every person you talk to that week or you come in contact with has to go on that list. And after 90 days, you have 500 contacts in each section. Dial it back to 10%, which is 50, and you hone in on those and really go ask for the business, right?
And that lends itself to what you were just talking about, putting in the work. You can't just sit back and wait for the loans to come to you.
Absolutely.
You have to go out and get them, and that means really leaning into your community.
Right. If you don't ask for it, it's not going to come, right? Another mistake I made is people think they open up a business and you're successful, you're great, you're doing this, and they admire you for opening up in a business. You become an inspiration. But what happens when markets change and you need help? Because you didn't ask for help when you were doing well. Now when things are bad, how many people are really going to help you? I mean, or do they think you need help? Because one of the things I always hate is they always say, well, you're going to be okay, Corrina, you've been successful. But that's not necessarily true. I have to still ask for the business, right? Or I still have to ask for people to help me, and or still I give. So one of the things I also did the past couple of years is I answered my phone more than ever before for all my colleagues nationwide. So we have other brokers we collaborate with. We have other owners. We have other owners that work with us. We have other ones that come on our coaching call. But I answer the phone and give them the answers, or either they give me answers and we share in the learning process together. So a collaboration is a huge deal right now in what we're doing.
All of these resources, all of the time that you pour into the training and coaching aspect of your business, our listeners are probably thinking, well, why is it worth it? You know, what has the impact been on your business with all of this time and energy that you have spent with training?
Think about this. In 05 and 07, I didn't have a lot of people wanted to come work with me because I was the only one that had FHA. So I had to teach them FHA. They had to learn FHA. But more importantly, they also had to run DU and LP. They didn't have to do that with the subprime market, right? They faxed in a 1003 and credit, and that was it. So I think those things also helped me stay in business in 10, 11, and 12. So now, actually, the things we're doing, I think it's going to elevate us to a different level when the market does turn a little bit different than what it is right now.
Okay, so as passionate as you are about this, what is your advice for our listeners, for other brokers out there, for other LOs, as far as why they need to invest in training and really stay on the cutting edge of getting better and continuing to learn like you do.
Right. Dial in, lean into your peers. Always do some type of coaching, right? So that's why we call our calls, instead of sales meetings, they're coaching calls, right? Because not everybody can be coached. So I think for them, it's really dialing into their process. What do they want their process to be? So here's my biggest thing in the war room is we started with Z and we worked our way back to A, not A to Z. What do you want your end process to look like? And what does that really end up with? And then when you start there and you dial back into A, then you start adding more things into your process that makes actually the consumer and your business blossom.
Well, you have put in the work to build your business. And oh, by the way, congratulations on the 18-year anniversary of CMS Mortgage Solutions. What a wonderful accomplishment for you and your team. Corrina Carter, CEO of CMS Mortgage Solutions, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.